Om Sthapakaya cha dharmasya sarvadharmasvarupine avatar varishtaya Ramakrishna te namaha. We all know that Sri Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekananda, they taught Advaita philosophy. And when we hear the word Advaita, we automatically assume usually that what's meant is Shankara's Advaita Vedanta, the great 8th century Indian philosopher Shankaracharya. But what I want to discuss today is that there's more than one kind of Advaita philosophy. And so I'll just explain these two types of Advaita philosophy, and then we'll discuss briefly which kind of Advaita philosophy was taught by Sri Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekananda. So the first type of Advaita was taught by Sri Shankaracharya, and it's captured in the famous statement from Vivekachudamani. Brahma satyam jagat mithya jivo brahmaheva naparaha. Brahman alone is real, the world is unreal, and the individual soul is none other than Brahman. So according to this type of Advaita philosophy, the only reality is the non-dual, impersonal Brahman. In Sanskrit, the term is Nirguna Brahman. And everything else, all the jivas, the individual souls, this entire universe, the Jagat, and the personal God, Ishvara, are empirically real, but ultimately unreal. From the Paramatika standpoint, the only reality is Nirguna Brahman. I would call this a world-denying Advaita philosophy because it insists that ultimately this world is not real. And this kind of Advaita is based on the spiritual experience of Nirvikalpa Samadhi. It's an experience in which we merge our individuality in the impersonal Brahman, and we feel that everything else is like a dream. And I should also just mention, in terms of sadhana, in terms of spiritual practice, according to Shankara's Advaita Vedanta, there's only one path that leads directly to liberation, and that is Jnana Yoga, the path of knowledge. So also keep that in mind. So Shankaracharya says that Karma Yoga and Bhakti Yoga can take us indirectly to liberation, but they can't take us all the way. They can help us to purify our minds, but ultimately we have to practice Jnana Yoga, and then alone we can attain liberation. So that's the first kind of Advaita Vedanta. I call that a world-denying Advaita Vedanta. And then there's another type of Advaita Vedanta, and this is one that's not often discussed. I would call this a world-affirming and all-inclusive Advaita philosophy. And it's based on a different kind of spiritual experience, which Sri Ramakrishna called the experience of vijñāna. So Sri Ramakrishna, very frequently in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, you'll find that he distinguishes two stages in spiritual experience, which he calls jnana and vijñāna. So let me just read one passage from the Gospel to explain this. He says, the jnani gives up his identification with worldly things, discriminating not this, neti, neti. Only then can he realize Brahman. It is like reaching the roof of a house by leaving the steps behind one by one. But the vijñāni, who is more intimately acquainted with Brahman, realizes something more. He realizes that the steps are made of the same materials as the roof, bricks, lime, and brick dust. That which is realized as Brahman through the eliminating process of not this, is then found to have become the universe and all its living beings. The vijñāni sees that the reality which is nirguna is also saguna, which is the reality which is impersonal is also personal. A man cannot live on the roof for a long time. He comes down again. Those who realize Brahman in Samadhi come down also and find that it is Brahman that has become the universe and its living beings. This is known as vijñāna. So this is a very, very important quotation from Sri Ramakrishna's teachings. On the basis of this spiritual experience of vijñāna, Sri Ramakrishna taught an all-encompassing Advaita philosophy that can be summed up in three main doctrines. The first doctrine is about ultimate reality. What is the nature of ultimate reality? According to Sri Ramakrishna, the ultimate reality is both impersonal, nirguna, and personal, saguna. On the other hand, Sri Shankaracharya taught that the ultimate reality is only nirguna. So one of Sri Ramakrishna's famous teachings is Brahma Ashokti Abhed. That's the original Bangla. And the English translation would be that Brahman, the impersonal Brahman, and the personal Shakti, he also called Shakti Kali, they are equally real. They are inseparable aspects of the same infinite divine reality. The Nirguna Brahman is the static or inactive aspect of the reality, and Shakti is the dynamic aspect of the same reality, and they're both equally real. The second doctrine of Sri Ramakrishna's all-inclusive Advaita philosophy concerns the status of this world, Jagat. While Shankara taught that the world is ultimately unreal, it does not exist from the ultimate standpoint, Sri Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekananda taught that the world is a real manifestation of God. That's why in the quotation that I read, Sri Ramakrishna says that the vijñāni sees that it is Brahman that has become the universe and its living beings. Brahman itself has become all the jivas and this entire jagat. Similarly, Swami Vivekananda, in one of his lectures, he says, "Here I can only lay before you what the Vedanta seeks to teach, and that is the deification of the world. The Vedanta does not in reality denounce the world. It really means deification of the world, giving up the world as we think of it, as we know it, as it appears to us, and to know what it really is. Deify it, it is God alone." What Swamiji means by deification of the world is exactly what Sri Ramakrishna meant when he says that Brahman has become everything in this universe. And finally, Swami Turiyanandaji, one of the direct monastic disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, at the very end of his life, just a few days before he left his body, he made a very important statement. He said in Bengali, "Brahma Shotto, Jagat Shotto, Shabi Shotto," which means Brahman is true, this world is true, everything is real. So this captures the second doctrine. The world is a real manifestation of God. And finally, the third doctrine of Sri Ramakrishna's all-inclusive Advaita Vedanta concerns spiritual practice. While Shankaracharya held that Jnana Yoga, the path of knowledge, is the only direct path to liberation, Sri Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekananda taught that all four of the yogas, Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Raja Yoga, all of these are direct and independent paths to the highest goal of liberation. As we know, Sri Ramakrishna taught the famous doctrine, Joto Mot Toto Pot, as many faiths, so many paths. And personally, my own favorite teaching with regard to the harmony of religions is a slightly different one. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, Tini Ananto, Patho Ananto. God is infinite and the paths to God are infinite. And the reason I like this teaching is because he explains why there are infinite paths to God. Because God himself is infinite, there are also infinite paths leading to God. That's the beauty of this teaching. And Swami Vivekananda, in a similar vein, he wrote, "Each one of our yogas is fitted to make man perfect, even without the help of the others, because they have all the same goal in view. The yogas of work, of wisdom, and of devotion are all capable of serving as direct and independent means for the attainment of moksha." So with this background in place, with this understanding of two different kinds of Advaita, one is this world-denying Advaita, and one is an all-inclusive, world-affirming Advaita Vedanta, I think we can better understand the philosophical and spiritual framework taught by the Holy Trio. Sri Ramakrishna often said to his disciples, "Advaita gyan achole bedhe ja kichu koro." That's the Bangla. And what that means is, he said, tie the non-dual knowledge in your cloth and do whatever you like. And Holy Mother said, "Thakur Advaita, tumrao Advaiti." Thakur was Advaita, and you are all followers of Advaita. So the question is, what does Thakur mean by Advaita? What does Holy Mother mean by Advaita? What does Swamiji mean by Advaita? And my humble suggestion is that what they meant is this second type of Advaita, this all-encompassing Advaita Vedanta, which teaches that there's nothing but God. All the jivas, this entire world, and the personal God, these are all real manifestations of God. Let us all pray to the Holy Trio, Sri Ramakrishna, Holy Mother Sharada Devi, and Swami Vivekananda, that we can all attain this exalted state of vijñāna, this Advaitic vision of seeing God in everything, by combining in our daily lives the yogas of devotion, work, knowledge, and meditation. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat. Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.